A $47,000 0 cents lawsuit over a bag of organic apples. That's what happens when your HOA president thinks she owns your groceries. Picture this. I'm walking from my car to my front door, arms loaded with grocery bags, when this woman storms across the street like she's responding to a fire alarm fire. "Excuse me," she barks. "Those groceries have been abandoned on HOA property." I'm thinking this is some kind of joke, right? Wrong. Linda Weatherby, our HOA president, dead serious as a heart attack, calls the actual police and demands I surrender my groceries to her community food bank, which, spoiler alert, was just her garage. 20 minutes later, I'm standing in my own driveway watching a cop examine Linda's homemade HOA emergency food requisition form 47B printed on her inkjet printer, while she's demanding custody of my Greek yogurt and sourdough bread. The crunch of gravel under the officer's boots, the smell of fresh bread wafting from my grocery bags, and the sound of Linda's heels clicking aggressively on the pavement, this was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a reasonable person. Have you ever dealt with an HOA Karen who thought she owned your property? Drop your nightmare stories below, because trust me, this is just the beginning of Linda's reign of terror. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in suburban hell with a grocery stealing HOA president. My name's Mike Chen, I'm 34, work in software engineering, and 6 months ago I was going through the kind of divorce that made you question every life choice you've ever made. You know that feeling when you just want to disappear somewhere quiet and start over? That's exactly what led me to Willowbrook Gardens, this picture-perfect HOA community where every lawn looks like it was cut with nail scissors and every mailbox is regulation beige. The realtor made it sound like paradise. "Oh, you'll love it here," she gushed. "The HOA keeps everything so pristine, and it's only $180 0 cents a month." What she didn't mention was the 47-page HOA handbook that reads like a prison manual, complete with oddly specific rules about community resource sharing that should have been my first red flag. Enter Linda Weatherby, 52 years old, HOA president for 8 consecutive years running, and I use the term running loosely since she's never faced opposition. Picture a retired bank manager who treats the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Always dressed in business casual, clipboard permanently attached to her hand like some kind of suburban cyborg, Linda doesn't walk through the neighborhood, she patrols it, conducting wellness checks on neighbors that are really just excuses to nose around and find violations. My first week, everything seemed normal. Neighbors waved, kids played in yards, dogs got walked on schedule. Then Linda struck. Week 2, I planted tulips in my front garden bed. Nothing crazy, just some color to brighten up the place. Tuesday morning, there's an official notice taped to my door, $200 0 cents fine for unauthorized garden modification. The violation claimed my tulips violated the Native Species Ordinance, a rule that doesn't exist anywhere in that 47-page handbook I'd actually read cover to cover. When I knocked on Linda's door to discuss this obvious mistake, she opened it with that smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Oh, Mike, I'm so glad you stopped by. You see, as HOA president, I have emergency powers to create temporary rules for community safety. The tulips could attract non-native insects." The smell of her over-fertilized lawn hit me as I stood there, processing the fact that this woman had just made up a rule to fine me for planting flowers. Her clipboard slapped against her leg as she shifted weight, and I noticed every lawn on the street looked identical. Because Linda mandated specific lawn care schedules for everyone. "Just pay the fine," my neighbor Tom whispered later. "Fighting Linda costs more than complying." That's when I learned about the Patels, the elderly couple who got a $500 0 cents fine for excessive holiday decorations, 3 strings of lights. Or the young family fined because their kids' toys were visible from street view. Linda's house, naturally, was the only one exempt from her own rules, pristinely maintained while everyone else lived in terror of violations. She had 2 board members who rubber-stamped every decision, turning our community into her personal fiefdom. But those tulips, they were just the appetizer. The main course came with my groceries. Saturday morning, 9:47 a.m., according to my Whole Foods receipt, I'd just dropped $200 0 cents on organic everything. You know how it is when you're trying to eat healthier after a life crisis. arms loaded with those brown paper bags that always seem heavier than they should be. I'm fumbling for my keys when they slip from my fingers and clatter onto the driveway. 30 seconds. That's how long it took me to pick up my keys and unlock my front door. 30 seconds of my groceries sitting in bags on my own driveway. That's when Linda materialized like some kind of suburban demon. I swear this woman has radar for any activity that might violate her imaginary rules. "Excuse me," she announces, marching across the street with purpose. "Those groceries have been abandoned on HOA property and need to be secured immediately." I actually laughed. You know that laugh you do when someone says something so ridiculous your brain can't process it? "Linda, these are my groceries. I literally just bought them. According to community safety protocols, any items left unattended for more than 60 seconds become a liability concern. As HOA president, I'm implementing emergency food security measures." She's standing there in her pressed khakis and polo shirt, dead serious, like she's announcing martial law over my Greek yogurt. That's when I pulled out my phone and hit record. Always document the crazy, folks. That's knowledge nugget number 1. "Linda, these are my groceries that I just purchased 15 minutes ago." But Linda wasn't backing down. She actually called 911. I listened to her tell the dispatcher that someone was trespassing with potentially stolen property and needed immediate assistance. The audacity was breathtaking. Officer Williams arrived looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, probably because this was his second Linda call this month. Linda immediately produces this official-looking document, holding it like it's the Constitution itself. "Officer, I present HOA Emergency Food Requisition Form 47B. As you can see, abandoned food items become community property for equitable distribution through our emergency food bank." I had to give her credit for creativity. The document looked legitimate at first glance, complete with official-sounding language and Linda's signature with a fancy flourish. Officer Williams examined it with the expression of someone trying not to laugh. "Ma'am, this appears to be printed on regular printer paper. All HOA documents are printed in-house for cost efficiency," Linda replied without missing a beat. I showed Officer Williams my receipt, timestamp 15 minutes earlier, with my name and credit card info. He looked from the receipt to Linda's homemade legal document, then back at Linda. "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. These are clearly his groceries. I'll be filing a report about this public disturbance," Linda threatened, pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal mastiff. "There will be a $500 0 cents fine for creating neighborhood discord." Officer Williams, bless him, turned to Linda with that cop voice that cuts through nonsense. "Ma'am, I need to warn you about filing false police reports. That's a misdemeanor in this state." That's when Mrs. Patterson across the street started filming from her window. Smart lady. And Tom Wilson, the neighbor who'd warned me about Linda, actually walked over to support me. "This is insane, Linda. The man just bought groceries." Linda wheeled on Tom faster than a cat pouncing on a mouse. "Your sprinkler timer violation hearing is scheduled for Monday at 7 p.m., remember? I'd hate for you to miss it." Tom's face went pale and he immediately backed down, mumbling apologies to Linda. That evening, I did what any reasonable person would do. I researched the hell out of HOA laws. Here's knowledge nugget number 2. HOA emergency powers have strict legal limitations defined by state law. They cannot claim personal property as abandoned on private driveways, and any emergency measures must be properly documented and voted on by the board. Linda's grocery grab was about as legal as a $3 bill. The sound of my printer working overtime that night, churning out legal precedents and property rights cases, was music to my ears. I found a case in Texas where similar HOA overreach resulted in a $50,000 0 cents judgment against the board. Linda had just picked a fight with someone who knew how to fight back. Linda's next move came at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday because apparently psychological warfare requires an early start. I'm barely conscious, coffee maker gurgling to life, when aggressive knocking rattles my front door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor borrowing sugar. This was the knock of someone with a badge and an attitude. Through the peephole, I see Linda flanked by 2 people I recognize as her board cronies, all holding clipboards like they're conducting some kind of suburban audit. I open the door and Linda immediately launches into her prepared speech. Mr. Chen, we're here to conduct an emergency health inspection due to reports of food hoarding in violation of community wellness standards. We'll need to photograph your pantry and refrigerator to ensure compliance with new emergency regulations. My brain hadn't even fully processed the coffee smell wafting from the kitchen when she drops the threat. $1,000, 0 cents fine for non-compliance with mandatory wellness inspections. That's when she shows me her latest masterpiece, a freshly printed emergency rule stating that homes cannot store more than 7 days of food supplies during community emergencies. I'm standing there in my pajamas, wondering if I've accidentally moved into some kind of communist food commune. Linda, you can't inspect inside people's homes. That's called the Fourth Amendment. As HOA president, I have broad emergency powers during community crisis situations. My doorbell camera was recording everything, bless modern technology, but I needed more than video evidence. I needed legal ammunition. After they left, I called the HOA's legal hotline, a number buried in the fine print of that 47-page handbook. 20 minutes on hold listening to elevator music, then a lawyer who sounded genuinely shocked. She did what? No. HOA boards have zero authority for interior home inspections without documented health hazards and proper legal process, and emergency rules require formal board votes and resident notification. Knowledge nugget number 3. Always check if your HOA actually filed their emergency rules properly. Most power-hungry board members skip the legal requirements and hope nobody notices. Linda hadn't filed anything. She was just making stuff up as she went along. I filed a formal complaint with the state HOA regulatory board and posted the doorbell footage on our neighborhood Facebook group. The response was immediate and explosive. 47 comments in 2 hours. 47 neighbors sharing Linda horror stories they'd been too afraid to tell publicly. Mrs. Patterson revealed that Linda had demanded to inspect her medicine cabinet last month, claiming prescription medications were controlled substances requiring community oversight. Tom Wilson finally admitted Linda had threatened to foreclose his home over a $20 0 cents late fee. The pattern was clear. Linda targeted newcomers, elderly residents, and anyone she thought wouldn't fight back. The smell of fear in our community was finally being replaced by the fresh air of people finding their voices. But Linda wasn't finished. She called an emergency HOA board meeting for Friday night, presenting her community food sharing mandate during emergencies A rule that would allow the HOA to requisition excess food supplies from any home during undefined emergency periods. I attended that meeting, watching Linda manipulate her board members like chess pieces. When they initially resisted, Linda casually mentioned reviewing their own properties for violations. Amazing how quickly people fall in line when threatened with their own medicine. The rule passed 3-2, with Linda's cronies rubber stamping her grocery grab scheme into official policy. But here's what Linda didn't know. I'd been consulting with a property rights attorney who offered a free consultation. The lawyer explained selective enforcement, the illegal practice of targeting specific residents while ignoring identical behavior from others. Document everything, the attorney advised. Patterns of harassment prove discrimination, and discrimination lawsuits are very expensive for HOAs to defend. The community was waking up. A secret group chat formed, excluding Linda's supporters. Residents started sharing legal resources and violation documentation. Mrs. Patterson offered her Ring camera footage showing Linda's unusual patrol schedule, evidence of deliberate targeting. The taste of community solidarity was sweet, but Linda's next move would be absolutely criminal. I should have known Linda would escalate when legal pressure started mounting. What I didn't expect was for her to literally break into my property like some kind of suburban burglar. Saturday morning, 10:15 a.m. I'd left for the gym, planning to work off some of the stress Linda had been causing. My outdoor storage bin, where I kept bulk groceries and paper products, was secured with a heavy-duty padlock. When I returned an hour later, the gate was wide open and the bin was empty. Completely empty. Linda and 3 volunteers had removed everything. We're talking $300 0 cents worth of groceries and supplies from canned goods to toilet paper. There's a bright yellow notice taped where my padlock used to be. immediate health hazard remediation, unsecured food storage attracting pests removed for community safety. Fine, $1,500, 0 cents for violation of emergency food storage protocols. The broken padlock was sitting on my patio table like some kind of trophy. Here's the thing about security cameras. They're only useful if you actually check them. The footage was pure gold. Linda using bolt cutters on my padlock at 10:47 a.m., directing her helpers to load my property into their cars. She'd even brought a checklist, organizing the theft like a military operation. This wasn't HOA overreach anymore. This was breaking and entering, theft and property destruction. Actual crimes with actual jail time. I called Officer Williams directly, and his tone changed immediately when I mentioned security footage of Linda using bolt cutters. That's criminal mischief, theft, and possibly burglary depending on circumstances. Can you come down to the station? Filing a police report felt surreal. Here I was, explaining to a detective how my HOA president had burglarized my storage bin to steal groceries for her fake food bank. The detective watched my security footage with the expression of someone who'd seen everything but was still occasionally surprised by human stupidity. We'll investigate and determine appropriate charges, he promised. Linda's panic was immediate and obvious. She called an emergency board meeting, claiming I had entrapped her with a booby-trap storage facility. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. Somehow, my locked storage bin was now a trap designed to make her commit crimes. I motioned to expel Mr. Chen from the HOA for creating a hostile environment and endangering community volunteers, Linda announced to the 3 remaining board members. That's when Sarah Kim, the newest board member, finally grew a spine. She approached me privately after the meeting, her hands literally shaking. Mike, I need to show you something. Linda's been doing this for years. The financial records Sarah shared were devastating. Linda hadn't just been stealing groceries. She'd been running a systematic embezzlement scheme through fake emergency expenses. $47,000, 0 cents, over 3 years, hidden behind invoices for services never rendered and supplies never delivered. But the real smoking gun came when I discovered Linda selling my stolen items online. My organic olive oil, the expensive kind with the fancy Italian label, was listed on Facebook Marketplace from Linda's account for $12, 0 cents. Other neighbors recognized their confiscated items in Linda's various online listings going back 18 months. The attorney I'd been consulting agreed to take the case pro bono. This is theft with clear evidence, plus a pattern of fraud. We're filing for a restraining order and demanding a full audit of HOA finances. When the police searched Linda's garage, they found thousands of dollars worth of stolen neighbor property organized like a retail store. Canned goods, cleaning supplies, electronics, tools. Linda had been running a theft operation disguised as HOA enforcement. The local news caught wind of the story. HOA president's grocery theft ring exposed was the kind of headline that writes itself. But the real victory came from the community response. 23 neighbors showed up to an unofficial meeting in my backyard. Ironic location considering this all started with my groceries. Stories emerged of Linda's systematic targeting, fake fines, manufactured emergencies, and elaborate theft schemes hidden behind official-sounding policies. We decided to recall Linda from the HOA presidency. Sarah Kim agreed to run as president with a transparency and accountability platform. The taste of justice was finally on the horizon, but Linda had one more desperate card to play. Sarah Kim's hands were trembling when she knocked on my door at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night. As the newest HOA board member, she'd been getting access to financial records that Linda had been keeping locked away. What she discovered made our grocery theft drama look like pocket change. Mike, you need to see this, she whispered, glancing around like Linda might be hiding in the bushes. I've been going through 3 years of HOA financial records, and Linda's been embezzling massively. The documents spread across my kitchen table told a story of systematic fraud that would make a mob accountant proud. Linda had created an elaborate paper trail of fake vendors and phantom services, all designed to funnel community money into her personal accounts. Willowbrook Emergency Food Services, LLC, Linda's sister's shell company that billed the HOA $12,000, 0 cents for emergency food supplies that never existed. Community Safety Consulting, Linda's husband's fake business that charged $8,000, 0 cents for security assessments that were never performed. Invoice after invoice for services never rendered, supplies never delivered, programs that existed only on paper. $47,000, 0 cents in community improvement funds had simply vanished over 3 years, hidden behind emergency rhetoric and Linda's authoritarian control of information. Every time residents asked about HOA expenses, Linda cited ongoing emergency protocols that made financial transparency impossible. She's been using fake emergency situations to justify stealing from all of us, Sarah explained, her voice cracking with anger. Every fine, every confiscated item, every fake rule, it was all about creating opportunities to take money and property. The pattern was diabolical in its simplicity. Linda would manufacture a crisis, implement emergency measures that gave her extraordinary powers, then use those powers to enrich herself while neighbors lived in fear. The grocery incident wasn't random harassment. It was Linda testing whether she could steal property in broad daylight using fake emergency authority. But here's what changed everything. With evidence of felony embezzlement, Linda's threats about foreclosures and fines became completely empty. She wasn't a powerful HOA president anymore. She was a criminal facing federal charges for mail fraud, since those fake invoices went through the postal system. The power dynamic had completely flipped. My attorney confirmed that embezzlement evidence would trigger Linda's automatic removal from the board and expose her to personal bankruptcy. All those intimidation tactics she'd used against neighbors, they were the desperate moves of someone trying to cover up serious crimes. Sarah's research revealed Linda's targeting strategy. Newcomers like me who didn't know community history, elderly residents who were unlikely to fight back, and minorities who might not feel comfortable challenging authority. Linda had deliberately selected victims who seemed powerless. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd picked a software engineer who knew how to document everything and fight back. Knowledge nugget number 4. HOA board members who embezzle face personal liability for every dollar stolen, plus criminal charges that can include federal mail-and-wire fraud. Their personal assets become fair game for recovery, and homeowner insurance doesn't cover criminal acts. The bigger picture was crystal clear now. This wasn't about groceries or tulips or community safety. This was about a serial fraudster who'd found the perfect cover. An HOA presidency that gave her authority to intimidate neighbors while she systematically robbed them blind. Linda's reign of terror was about to end, but she didn't know it yet. Attorney Maria Santos spread the evidence across her conference table like a prosecutor preparing for trial. With Linda's embezzlement exposed, we weren't just fighting HOA harassment anymore. We were pursuing a criminal who'd stolen from an entire community for years. Here's our 3-pronged strategy, Maria explained, her confidence evident in every word. First, criminal charges through the district attorney's office for theft and embezzlement. Second, civil lawsuit for damages and harassment to get you financial recovery. Third, HOA governance reform to prevent future abuse. She emphasized a key legal principle that every homeowner should understand. HOA board members have fiduciary duty to the community, and breaching that duty creates personal liability for damages. When board members steal, they're personally responsible for every dollar, not just the HOA. My kitchen became mission control for organizing evidence. Digital files, security footage, financial records, email communications, everything Sarah and I had gathered over months of Linda's escalating behavior. Mrs. Patterson contributed her Ring camera footage showing Linda's trespassing patterns. Tom Wilson finally shared email threats about foreclosure, proving systematic harassment. 17 neighbors contributed documentation of fake fines and stolen property. The scope of Linda's crimes was staggering. She'd been running a neighborhood-wide theft ring disguised as emergency HOA measures. Weekly community meetings started in my backyard. Ironic considering Linda's grocery theft happened in my driveway. Residents pooled resources for legal costs, creating a group lawsuit that would be cheaper and more powerful than individual claims. Sarah Kim was running unopposed for HOA president with a reform platform emphasizing transparency and accountability. We drafted new HOA bylaws requiring monthly financial reports, annual independent audits, and board term limits. The community legal fund we established would protect future residents from similar abuse. The smell of coffee and determination filled those evening strategy sessions as neighbors who'd been strangers became allies. Local reporter Jessica Martinez was interested in our suburban corruption story. Her pitch to editors: HOA president's $50,000, 0 cents food theft ring exposed by grocery incident. Social media documentation through our neighborhood Facebook group provided real-time evidence of community impact. The plan for Linda's final confrontation was elegant in its simplicity. Let her make one more desperate move at the monthly HOA meeting, recorded for transparency, with neighbors as witnesses. Linda didn't know about the criminal investigation or the extent of evidence we'd gathered. She was walking into a trap of her own making. Asset investigation revealed Linda owned rental properties, a boat, and luxury cars, plenty of assets to secure our judgment. The HOA's liability insurance policy included coverage for board member theft, meaning residents would recover losses regardless of Linda's personal wealth. Maria explained 3 technical knowledge nuggets every homeowner should know. HOA audit rights: every HOA member can legally request financial records, and refusal to provide them is often illegal under state law. Fiduciary duty violations: board members who steal face personal bankruptcy and criminal charges, not just removal from office. Selective enforcement claims: targeting specific demographics for violations can trigger expensive discrimination lawsuits that insurance won't cover. Our team was solid. Officer Williams taking Linda's criminal behavior seriously, Jessica Martinez committed to exposing the story publicly, Maria Santos working pro bono for justice and publicity, Sarah Kim providing inside intelligence, and Mrs. Patterson serving as unofficial neighborhood communication hub. The trap was set. Linda's desperation was about to become her downfall, and the entire community would witness her final performance as the curtain came down on her reign of suburban terror. Linda's discovery of the criminal investigation came through courthouse public records. She was smart enough to monitor legal filings, but not smart enough to realize how much evidence we'd already gathered. Her panic response was immediate, reckless, and absolutely incriminating. Sarah Kim caught Linda in the HOA office at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night, feeding financial documents into a paper shredder like she was destroying classified government secrets. The sound of shredding paper echoed through the empty community center as Linda frantically tried to eliminate evidence of her embezzlement scheme. "Linda, what are you doing here so late?" Sarah asked, her phone already recording video. "Just reorganizing files," Linda replied, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool evening air. "Some of these old records are taking up unnecessary space." The shredder was full of financial documents, bank statements, and invoices. Exactly the records prosecutors would need for criminal charges. Sarah photographed everything before Linda noticed, capturing evidence of obstruction of justice in real time. But Linda's most spectacular mistake came 2 days later when she approached me privately at the grocery store parking lot, the same store where this whole nightmare began. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. "Mike, we need to talk like reasonable adults," she said, her voice artificially sweet. "I think we can settle this whole misunderstanding quietly without lawyers and all this drama." I kept my phone recording in my pocket while Linda made her pitch. "I'm prepared to drop all fines and violations against you if you drop these ridiculous criminal charges. This is just a neighborhood dispute blown out of proportion." Then came the smoking gun. "I can offer you $5,000, 0 cents cash for your trouble. We both know this whole thing started over a simple misunderstanding about some groceries. Attempted bribery. On tape, Linda had just confessed to theft while trying to bribe me to drop criminal charges, 2 additional felonies that would guarantee prison time. She was so panicked about the embezzlement investigation that she'd completely lost judgment about making things worse. Her community intimidation campaign was equally desperate and self-destructive. Linda sent threatening letters to neighbors supporting me, claiming she had legal authority to foreclose on homes for conspiracy against HOA leadership. She threatened to increase HOA fees to pay for legal defense against frivolous attacks. Several elderly neighbors became frightened and considered withdrawing support, but the threats backfired spectacularly. Neighbors recognized desperate behavior when they saw it, and Linda's intimidation tactics just proved everything we've been saying about her abuse of power. My response was calculated silence. I turned the bribery recording over to police and my attorney, letting Linda dig her hole deeper while prosecutors built an airtight case. The district attorney's office formally opened an embezzlement investigation, and criminal charges were filed but kept sealed until after our planned public confrontation. The community recall petition gained 67 signatures, 75% of residents making Linda's removal inevitable. Local news scheduled their story for the day after our HOA meeting, giving Linda just enough rope to hang herself publicly. Linda's final miscalculation was hiring an expensive attorney using remaining HOA funds, money that legally belonged to the community she'd been stealing from. Her lawyer advised her to resign quietly and negotiate a plea deal, but Linda's ego wouldn't allow retreat. She planned to claim at the public meeting that I'd orchestrated a conspiracy to frame an innocent volunteer. Linda didn't realize we had recordings of her confessing to theft, video of her destroying evidence, and financial records proving years of embezzlement. The setup was complete. Meeting location changed to the community center for larger capacity, all evidence organized for public presentation. Neighbors coached on asking specific questions about finances, reporter and camera crew positioned discreetly, police standing by for arrest after the meeting. Linda was walking into the most spectacular public downfall in HOA history, and she had no idea what was waiting for her. Linda's final act of desperation involved something I never expected: cyber warfare. She created fake social media accounts to launch a character assassination campaign that would have impressed a political dirty tricks operative. "Mike Chen is a dangerous software hacker targeting elderly neighbors," read one post from concerned Willowbrook resident 47. Another fake account claimed I was using advanced computer skills to manipulate financial records and frame innocent volunteers. The posts spread rumors about my divorce, alleged financial problems, and even questioned my mental health. Linda's narrative was actually clever: paint me as an unstable tech expert who'd manufactured evidence to destroy a devoted community volunteer. Several neighbors initially believed her version, especially those who weren't tech savvy enough to trace the fake accounts. Sarah Kim warned me about the social media campaign, but my software engineering background made tracking Linda's digital footprints embarrassingly easy. The fake accounts were all created from Linda's home IP address, using variations of her email addresses and posted during times that matched her known schedules. She'd even used photos from her own Facebook account for the fake profiles. Screenshots and technical evidence of the defamation campaign became additional exhibits for our civil lawsuit. My attorney added cyberbullying and defamation to the growing list of charges. Linda's harassment now spanned physical theft, financial fraud, and digital stalking, a trilogy of suburban criminality. But Linda wasn't finished. She attempted to call an emergency HOA meeting to expel me before the recall election, claiming I violated community harmony clauses and posed a safety threat to elderly residents. Her plan was to schedule the meeting during work hours when most supporters couldn't attend, then ram through my expulsion with her remaining cronies. Sarah Kim blocked the meeting as procedurally invalid without proper resident notification. Linda's desperation became obvious even to her supporters. This wasn't leadership anymore, it was panic. The real game changer came from an unexpected source. Linda's own sister contacted my attorney with devastating evidence. Family loyalty apparently has limits when federal criminal charges are involved. "Linda's been using my name for fake vendor companies for years," her sister explained during a recorded phone call. "I just found out about the embezzlement investigation from the news. I have bank records showing money transfers to Linda's personal accounts." A family member turning whistleblower made the embezzlement case absolutely airtight. Linda had no idea her own sister was providing prosecutors with evidence that would guarantee conviction. Reporter Jessica Martinez's investigation deepened the story beyond our community. She discovered Linda had been forced to resign from her previous HOA for financial irregularities, a pattern of fraud going back 12 years across multiple communities. Our case was part of a larger serial fraud investigation that caught the attention of the state attorney general's office. Linda's remaining board supporters finally abandoned ship as more evidence emerged. 2 board members resigned, leaving the HOA legally unable to function without proper leadership. An emergency property management company was hired to maintain community services while criminal investigations proceeded. The insurance company completed their investigation and confirmed massive fraud. The HOA's policy would cover $73,000, 0 cents, in community losses plus individual damages. Federal charges were filed for insurance fraud, mail fraud, and wire fraud. Linda was facing serious prison time regardless of state charges. Community fractures along Linda's support lines became irrelevant as neighbors focused on criminal prosecution rather than personal grievances. Even former supporters demanded justice when they realized the extent of Linda's theft from community funds. My tactical patience was paying off. Instead of confronting Linda publicly before gathering evidence, I documented her escalating behavior while prosecutors built a federal case. The public HOA meeting would be Linda's final performance before arrest, and she still thought she could spin the narrative in her favor. The smell of justice was finally stronger than the fear that had paralyzed our community for years. Thursday evening, 7 p.m., Willowbrook Community Center. 73 residents packed into a room designed for 30, with local news crew positioned discreetly in the back corner. Police officers sat near the exit, officially present for community relations, but really waiting for their cue. Linda arrived 20 minutes late, visibly flustered and overdressed in a business suit that screamed, "I'm definitely not guilty of embezzling community funds." She surveyed the packed room with the expression of someone who'd expected a small, controllable audience and found a revolution instead. "We're here tonight because one resident has decided to destroy our community," Linda began, her voice cracking slightly. "Mike Chen has fabricated evidence, manipulated elderly neighbors, and created chaos where there was once peace and order." She presented her own evidence, printed screenshots of my social media posts that proved absolutely nothing except that I occasionally shared articles about property rights. This man is guilty of cyberterrorism and elder abuse, using his computer skills to target vulnerable residents. The accusation was so absurd that nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson stood up first, her voice steadied despite her 78 years. "Linda, can you explain where the $47,000, 0 cents in emergency funds went? We'd like to see receipts for all those emergency food supplies you purchased." Linda's face went pale, but she deflected with practiced ease. "All expenditures were properly authorized and documented according to emergency protocols." Tom Wilson found his courage next. "Then, why can't you produce receipts for Willowbrook Emergency Food Services? That company doesn't exist anywhere except on HOA invoices." "That information is confidential pending legal review," Linda snapped, her composure cracking. Sarah Kim requested the floor and connected her laptop to the room's projector. Bank records filled the screen, showing Linda's personal deposits corresponding exactly with fake HOA invoices. She read aloud from documents Linda thought were destroyed: invoices for phantom services, payments to shell companies, money transfers to Linda's personal accounts. The community gasped as 3 years of systematic embezzlement was laid bare in black and white. Linda interrupted desperately. "This is an illegal ambush. I demand this meeting be adjourned immediately." That's when I stood up and played my ace card. The community center's sound system filled with Linda's recorded voice from the grocery store parking lot. "I can offer you $5,000, 0 cents cash for your trouble. We both know this whole thing started over a simple misunderstanding about some groceries." The recording continued with Linda's confession: "I was just trying to protect community resources. Maybe I took things that weren't technically mine, but it was for the greater good." Silence. Complete stunned silence as 73 neighbors heard their HOA president confess to theft and attempted bribery. Linda's face went from pale to crimson as she realized her own words had just destroyed her. "That recording is illegal. You can't use that against me," she screamed, her carefully maintained facade finally collapsing. Officer Williams stepped forward with handcuffs ready. "Linda Weatherby, you're under arrest for embezzlement, theft, and attempted bribery." The Miranda rights echoed through the silent room as Linda broke down completely, sobbing about misunderstandings and community protection. "This is all a conspiracy," she wailed as handcuffs clicked into place. "I was protecting this community. I dedicated 8 years of my life to keeping you people safe." The community erupted in applause as police escorted Linda out to a waiting patrol car. News cameras captured every moment of the most spectacular HOA president downfall in suburban history. Sarah Kim was unanimously elected interim president on the spot. The community voted to dissolve all of Linda's fake emergency rules and fraudulent fines. A community fund was established to help elderly neighbors recover stolen property, and neighbors who'd been strangers for years started exchanging contact information and planning Linda's replacement together. Reporter Jessica Martinez interviewed me as police cars departed. What started this investigation into HOA corruption? "She tried to steal my groceries," I replied, still amazed by the absurdity. Sometimes the smallest injustice reveals the biggest corruption. When someone thinks they can take your groceries with fake emergency powers, you have to wonder what else they're taking. Mrs. Patterson summed it up perfectly for the cameras. "We were all afraid to speak up individually. Mike gave us the courage to fight back as a community." The news story led with, "Software engineer's grocery dispute exposes $50,000 0 cents HOA embezzlement scheme." The footage of Linda's arrest went viral within hours, shared by frustrated homeowners across the country who recognized their own HOA nightmares in our story. Police searched Linda's garage that night, cataloging thousands of dollars in stolen neighbor property organized like a retail store. The district attorney announced formal charges: embezzlement, theft, fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Linda's suburban reign of terror was officially over. The community celebration continued in the parking lot long after the meeting ended. Neighbors finally free to speak openly about years of intimidation and abuse. And yes, I finally got my groceries back, spoiled after months in evidence storage, but symbolically priceless. 3 months later, Linda Weatherby stood in orange jumpsuit before Judge Morrison, pleading guilty to avoid trial. 18 months in prison, $73,000, 0 cents restitution, 5 years probation, and permanent banishment from serving on any HOA board in the state. Her suburban empire had crumbled completely. The civil lawsuit settled for an additional $25,000, 0 cents plus attorney fees. Linda lost her house, boat, and rental properties to pay court judgments. The insurance company paid full policy limits, covering all community losses and then some. Justice had a price tag, and Linda was paying it in full. Sarah Kim's election as permanent HOA president brought revolutionary changes to Willowbrook Gardens. New bylaws required monthly financial reports posted online, annual independent audits, and term limits preventing future dictatorships. All emergency powers were eliminated, requiring community votes for major decisions. HOA fees dropped 40% after eliminating Linda's fake expenses. Property values increased 8% due to improved community management and the national publicity highlighting our successful fight against corruption. Turns out defeating suburban tyrants is good for real estate values. My personal transformations surprised me most. The shy, recently divorced guy who just wanted quiet suburban life became the neighborhood's unofficial legal resource person. I help other residents understand their rights and fight unfair treatment. Mrs. Patterson teaches me gardening in exchange for tech support, a trade that would have horrified Linda's native species sensibilities. Tom Wilson and I started weekend barbecue traditions that bring neighbors together. The community that once lived in fear now thrives on collaboration and friendship. The smell of grilling burgers has replaced the tension that hung over our streets during Linda's reign. The ripple effects exceeded our wildest expectations. The local news story went viral with 2.3 million views and national media pickup. I was interviewed on podcasts about fighting HOA abuse, sharing strategies with homeowners across the country facing similar corruption. The state legislature passed the HOA Transparency Act, inspired by our case, requiring financial audits and limiting emergency powers for all HOA boards statewide. Other communities contact me regularly for advice on similar corruption investigations. Attorney Maria Santos became the regional expert on HOA fraud, with a waiting list of clients. Our community social good initiatives honor the positive change that emerged from Linda's crimes. The Willowbrook Community Fund, established with surplus insurance settlement money, provides annual scholarships for local high school students pursuing law or public service careers. We created a community garden where Linda's stolen property was once stored, irony at its finest. Monthly neighborhood potlucks happen in the same community center where Linda was arrested. Volunteer programs help elderly neighbors with technology and legal issues, ensuring no one faces intimidation alone again. The sound of children playing and neighbors laughing has replaced Linda's clipboard clicking patrols. My final trip to the same Whole Foods where this adventure began was perfectly symbolic. The cashier recognized me from news coverage and offered a discount on the groceries that started our entire legal battle. I bought the same organic apples, joking about needing armed grocery escort service. But the real victory was donating equivalent groceries to a legitimate local food bank, the kind Linda pretended to operate while stealing from neighbors. I took a photo with those groceries on my own driveway, finally safe from suburban grocery pirates. The lessons learned changed how I view community injustice. Small acts of resistance can expose massive corruption when ordinary people find courage to document abuse and demand accountability. Technology and legal knowledge are powerful tools against authority abuse, but community solidarity makes the real difference. Never let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is causing trouble. Document everything. Your phone camera is your best legal weapon. Communities grow stronger when neighbors support each other against bullies, and sometimes protecting your groceries means protecting everyone's freedom. Have you survived an HOA nightmare that needs investigation? Drop your horror stories in the comments below. Your experience might expose the next Linda Weatherby terrorizing innocent neighbors. Which community deserves our attention next? Hit that subscribe button for more stories of underdogs defeating corrupt systems. Your support helps us investigate and expose abuse of power wherever it hides behind clipboards and fake emergency authority. Next week, how a parking ticket led to exposing a $200,000 0-cent city council bribery scheme. And don't forget to check out our previous story about the landlord who tried to charge rent for the tenant's own furniture. The taste of justice is sweet, but the sound of community laughter is sweeter. Welcome to the neighborhood where groceries are safe, gardens grow freely, and HOA presidents actually serve the people who elected them.